At 5 o'clock local time, the steel beneath the carrier's flight deck gave off a low, steady vibration as the ship moved through open water. The sea was calm, the wind over the bow was stable. Deck crews worked with quiet precision. Aircraft sat parked and secured, waiting in perfect order. Nothing about the scene suggested that anything unusual was about to happen. Then the atmosphere changed. Deep inside the Combat Information Center, a radar operator leaned closer to the screen. A new contact had appeared at the edge of the display. Fast, low, clean. No transponder, no flight plan. Its bearing held steady, and its speed continued to rise. Unknown air contact. The words were calm, professional, and recorded without drama. On the bridge, the officer of the deck did not look up immediately. He did not need to. The ship's systems were already delivering the information that mattered most. Altitude decreasing, closing speed increasing. This was not civilian traffic. This was not a simple navigation mistake. This was deliberate. Confirmed track, the captain said evenly. Confirmed. Single aircraft. Low observable profile. 5 seconds later, another voice came through. Visual in 3, 2... The shadow crossed the deck before the sound arrived. A dark shape cut across the sky at extremely low altitude, moving faster than the eye could fully process. A moment later, the roar followed, deep, heavy, and overwhelming. Loose equipment trembled. Air pressure rolled across parked aircraft. Sailors stopped mid-step as the jet flashed overhead, passing directly above the landing area. And then it was gone. But everyone on board knew exactly what they had just seen. A Russian Su-57. No warning, no radio call, no change in course, just a direct pass over one of the most closely protected vessels on the ocean. On deck, nobody ran, nobody shouted. That detail mattered. "Maintain stations," the captain ordered. His voice stayed level. Inside the CIC, the response began. Not outward, but inward. Screens updated, tracks were refined, sensors linked together. The ship did not react emotionally. It reacted as a system. Condition 3, set and man all key stations. Across the carrier, procedures shifted into motion. Systems came online, not to escalate, but to observe. The Su-57 appeared again on sensors, already turning wide. It had not left the area, it was circling. Electro-optical systems locked on. Infrared data filled the displays. Every angle, every heat variation, every tiny adjustment in the aircraft's control surfaces was being recorded. This was not about fear, not here. This was about information. On the bridge, the captain kept his eyes on the sea ahead, not the sky. He understood the moment clearly. The flyover was not random. It was a probe, a test of reaction time, discipline, and posture. The carrier did not change course. That decision mattered. The Su-57 came around again. Lower this time, tighter. Still no radio call, still no acknowledgement. The aircraft wanted to be noticed. It wanted a reaction. It did not get one. Instead, the carrier's strike group tightened quietly. Radar coverage overlapped. Passive sensors listened. Nothing unnecessary was transmitted. No dramatic signals were given. No visible show of force appeared on deck. Only controlled silence. Inside the CIC, a systems officer spoke without looking away from the display. Signature capture ongoing. Flight envelope mapping stable. This is the part most people never see. Every second the aircraft stayed nearby, it revealed something. Heat pattern, shape, movement, micro-adjustments. The details that even advanced stealth cannot fully hide when it gets too close. The closer it comes, the more it gives away. The Su-57 banks gently, rolling its wings just enough to make its message clear without pushing the moment too far. It is close enough now for sailors on the flight deck to see the sharp lines of its fuselage and the matte surface catching the sunlight for a brief second. The jet is powerful. There is no question about that. But power and control are not the same thing. On deck, a yellow shirt slowly raises one hand, signaling a pause in movement. Not because anyone is afraid, but because discipline demands it. This carrier will not appear unsettled. Below deck, every detail is being recorded. Bearing, altitude, speed, behavior, timing. This encounter will remain in the system long after the aircraft has disappeared from view. The Su-57 climbs slightly, easing back as it hovers near the edge of the carrier's sensor coverage. It stays just long enough to make sure its presence is understood. Then it turns away. No final gesture, no last pass, just a clean break toward open sky. The sound fades, the shadow vanishes. Wind and ocean take back the moment. On the carrier, operations resume within seconds. Chains rattle again. Sailors move with purpose. Aircraft crews return to their tasks. To an outside observer, it might seem as if nothing happened. But something did. A message was delivered. And something far more valuable was collected. The aircraft does not leave the area completely. It climbs, but not far. It turns wide, but not away. On radar, the track settles into a measured arc, controlled, deliberate, and impossible to ignore. This is not a flyby meant to end with noise. This is a presence meant to stay in the mind. Inside the Combat Information Center, no one speaks about intimidation. That word has no value here. What matters is geometry. Track holding, a watch officer reports. Altitude increasing, speed steady. The Su-57 remains close enough to matter and close enough to be studied. Across the carrier group, sensors align quietly. Passive systems listen. Active systems stay measured. Nothing unnecessary is announced. This is not a dramatic response. This is a collection process. Every aircraft reveals something when it flies. Heat patterns form around the engines. Tiny vibrations move across control surfaces. Angles shift under pressure. Corrections appear in the smallest movements. At this distance, stealth is no longer just a concept. It becomes a calculation. Electro-optical cameras follow the jet through the clear sky. Infrared sensors map changes in thermal output across different power settings. Radar keeps the motion in view without making a show of it. The Su-57 knows it is being watched. It may not understand how completely. On the bridge, the captain remains still, hands behind his back, eyes forward. He understands the balance perfectly. Any obvious reaction would give the aircraft exactly what it came for. It does not get that reaction. Continue data collection, he says. The Su-57 descends again, angling closer. Not directly overhead this time. Offset, testing the edges, searching for gaps in coverage. But there are no easy gaps here. Below deck, analysts begin building the profile in real time. Flight path consistency, turn rate, acceleration curves, response timing. The aircraft's movements are precise, but not random. That tells its own story. The pilot is confident, and confidence creates patterns. At this range, the carrier's systems can observe how the jet behaves under sustained attention. How long it holds a line, how quickly it corrects, how sharply it turns when it knows it is being tracked. Those details matter. The Su-57's engines brighten briefly as it adjusts position. Just a small increase in thrust. To an untrained eye, it would mean almost nothing. To the infrared feed, it is valuable. Thermal spike logged, a technician says quietly. Every spike, every adjustment, every decision, all of it becomes data. None of it is emotional. None of it is personal. This is not about flags, pride, or performance. This is about understanding. The aircraft makes another pass along the outer edge of the carrier group's coverage. Still no radio contact. Still no transponder. Still no acknowledgement. The silence is intentional. But silence does not mean invisibility. The carrier systems are built for moments far more complex than this. They can track fast-moving objects at extreme speed, manage crowded skies, and process pressure from every direction. Compared to that, one fighter in clear weather is simple, predictable, readable. On the flight deck, crews continue under strict direction. Movement stays controlled. No one looks up unless they need to. The ship will not advertise attention. That restraint is deliberate. The Su-57 dips lower again, pressing against the boundary. This is the kind of moment where less disciplined forces might overreact, where noise might rise, where visible posture might change. But here, nothing changes on the surface. Instead, a quiet confirmation moves through the CIC.
Full envelope capture achieved.
That sentence carries more weight than any dramatic response ever could. The aircraft has now spent enough time close enough to reveal its habits, its reactions, its comfort zone, its timing, its limits. Every system aboard the carrier and its escorts now knows more about this jet than it did before. And the Su-57 came close enough to make sure it was seen. But in doing so, it allowed itself to be understood. The Su-57 begins to widen its turn. The pilot has what he came for, or at least he believes he does. From his point of view, he passed low over a carrier and left without being openly challenged. That is the kind of story that travels well. But what he does not see are the logs being finalized, the files being secured, and the quiet precision of a force that never needed to reveal its full position. The carrier never changed course. That, too, is data.
As the aircraft moves farther out, its signature begins to fade from the most sensitive sensors. Not suddenly, not completely, just enough to confirm the exit path. "Contact increasing range," the watch officer says. The captain gives a single nod. "Maintain course." No one celebrates, no one speaks of winning. This was not a dramatic showdown. It was an exchange. And the carrier leaves the moment with far more than it had before. The sea remains calm. The sky returns to empty blue. From a distance, it looks as if nothing happened at all. But deep below deck, the encounter is already being examined frame by frame. The flyover was the headline. The data was the real story. And that story is only beginning. The Su-57 does not fully leave. It adjusts. On the scopes, the contact shifts altitude and bearing with careful restraint, staying near the edge of proximity without pushing past the line. This is no longer a demonstration, it is a negotiation without words. Inside the operations center, focus sharpens, but nothing changes outwardly. This is the moment where discipline matters most. Contact maintaining parallel track, a watchstander reports. Range stable. The carrier remains steady on course, speed unchanged, wind over deck constant. That choice is intentional. At sea, movement can be misread. A turn can become a message. A speed change can become a signal. So the carrier gives nothing away. The response is not a maneuver, it is a system. Across the carrier group, coordination deepens quietly. Data streams merge. Timelines align. Sensors that had stayed silent now compare their findings without announcing themselves. The ship does not display readiness, it simply becomes readiness. On the bridge, the captain leans slightly toward the display, studying the geometry. He is not watching the aircraft, he is watching the space between decisions. "Keep it clean," he says. Below, air controllers quietly adjust the surrounding airspace. Not to block the jet, but to frame the situation. If the aircraft moves closer, it will enter a space already understood, already measured, already controlled by procedure. That is the paradox of control. The less you show, the more you own. The Su-57 banks again, tighter this time. Its turn radius shrinks. The jet is testing lateral response, searching for the moment when restraint turns into visible action. That moment never arrives. Instead, a new layer appears. Far beyond visual range, an Allied aircraft changes altitude. Not toward the Su-57, not away from it, just enough to shift the geometry and make one thing clear. The jet is not alone in the sky. The message is subtle. It is not sent by radio, it is sent by mathematics. Inside the operations center, a systems officer speaks calmly. Air picture normalized. No conflict vectors.
That sentence marks a threshold. The encounter has moved from uncertainty into control. The Su-57 holds position for several long seconds, long enough to decide whether to press further.
Long enough to understand that the reaction it came looking for is not coming. This is where tense moments can grow. And this is where this one stops. On the flight deck, no one looks up. That detail matters. The sailors trust the system because the system is doing exactly what it was built to do. Panic would suggest weakness. Attention would offer validation. The jet descends slightly, then climbs again. A hesitation. A human moment inside a machine built for precision. The carrier does nothing. That silence is the response. Behind the scenes, recordings continue. Timestamps roll forward. Every deviation is logged. Every second adds clarity. The Su-57 is no longer being understood only by shape. It is being understood by behavior. This is the part of modern air power most people never see. No dramatic visuals, no raised voices, no sudden movement, just the steady accumulation of certainty. The aircraft turns outward, widening its arc. It is still close, but no longer committed. The pilot has read the space and found no opening. On the bridge, the captain finally speaks again. Let him go. Not because he has to, because he can. The Su-57 banks decisively now, angling away from the carrier group's center line. Its speed increases, not sharply, but enough to declare its departure. Contact breaking, the operation center reports. The aircraft moves farther into open sky. The sound fades first. Then the shape. Then the trace. But the record remains. Every pass, every turn, every adjustment, every hesitation. The pilot may leave believing he tested the carrier, but the carrier tested him back, quietly, completely, and without ever changing course. Increasing range. The carrier gives no answer. It does not need to. In the moments after the encounter, nothing appears to change. Operations continue. Deck cycles resume. Radio traffic stays calm and minimal. From the outside, the ship looks exactly as it did before. Steady, focused, unmoved. But the response has already happened. It happened in the decision to hold course, in the refusal to perform, in the confidence to let the moment spend itself without being rewarded. The Su-57 disappears into the distance, carrying away a story its pilot believes he controls. But he does not. Because the real answer was never meant for the sky. It was meant for the record. And that record now exists. Complete, precise, and impossible to ignore. The carrier sails on, unchanged in appearance, changed only by what it now knows. The encounter has passed without incident, exactly the way professionals prefer it. Because when control is complete, silence is not hesitation. It is authority. The jet is still visible, but only just. Not close enough to matter in the same way, not far enough to be dismissed. A shrinking shape against the higher layers of blue, followed now more by procedure than urgency. The Su-57's departure is careful, measured, controlled. It does not want to look like it is pulling away too quickly. On the carrier, no announcement marks the moment. No visible change signals relief. The ship does not exhale. Because the situation is not finished when the aircraft turns away. It is finished when the environment returns to normal. Inside the operations center, watchstanders continue to monitor the contact long after it begins to open distance. This is not concern, it is discipline. Encounters end the same way they begin. Precisely. Range increasing, a voice reports. Altitude high, track steady. The Su-57 is climbing now, easing into a departure profile that suggests it is ready to disengage. No sudden acceleration, no sharp turns. The pilot understands that the moment has passed. What he may not fully understand is what was exchanged. On the bridge, the captain remains composed. He does not follow the aircraft with his eyes. His attention is on continuity, making sure nothing about the carrier's behavior changes because of outside pressure. That consistency is not passive, it is policy. Flight operations resume in full. Yellow shirts guide aircraft into position. Chains are checked again. Engines begin to spool. To a casual observer, the carrier looks untouched by what just happened. That impression is intentional. Below deck, however, the real work is only beginning. Data streams collected during the encounter are being verified. Timestamps are synchronized.
Redundant records are checked against one another. This is where a flyover becomes a permanent reference point. Every system that observed the Su-57 now compares notes. Radar tracks are matched with infrared imagery. Optical feeds are checked against motion analysis. Each source confirms the others. Nothing is rushed. Here, accuracy matters more than speed. This is not a reaction, it is collection. The Su-57 continues to move away, now beyond visual range. On sensors, its signature thins, then steadies.
It has committed to leaving the area.
Contact at extended range, the operations center confirms. No further maneuvers.
The captain nods once. Log it, he says. That single instruction closes one chapter and opens another. Because while the sky clears, the meaning remains. This encounter will not live only as a dramatic story or a headline. It will live in databases, in training briefs, and in quiet system updates that will remember the aircraft long after the pilot has landed. On the flight deck, a sailor wipes residue from his gloves and returns to work. He may not speak much about the flyover later, not because he cannot, but because to him, the ship handled it exactly as expected. That, too, is a sign of control. The Su-57 is now a distant contact, barely more than a mark on the scope. The carrier group returns fully to its rhythm. Its presence remains unchanged. No public message was sent. No visible answer was offered. No dramatic display was needed.
And yet, the outcome is clear. The aircraft came close, looked for a reaction, and left without receiving one. In modern naval operations, that is not uncertainty. That is a conclusion. Back on the bridge, the captain finally allows himself a brief glance toward the horizon. The sea is calm again. The sky is empty. The carrier moves forward, unchanged in direction and purpose. The moment has passed. But the lesson remains. Power does not always announce itself. It does not always turn. It does not always answer. Sometimes it simply continues forward, confident that time, systems, and discipline are already on its side. The Su-57 flew away, believing it had tested a boundary. What it actually did was confirm one. And that boundary did not move. The sky is empty again. Blue stretches uninterrupted above the carrier, broken only by the steady pattern of routine aircraft and the faint trails of normal operations returning to their rhythm. To the outside world, the encounter is already over. But below deck, it has only begun its second life. Analysts review the record frame by frame. The aircraft's path is reconstructed with exact timing. Its turns, climbs, corrections, and pauses are laid out not as drama, but as information. Every second becomes useful. Every movement adds context. Every choice reveals a little more. The carrier does not need to say what it learned. It only needs to remember. And it will. On board, the encounter has not ended. It has only changed form.
Inside the operations center, the watch has rotated.
Fresh eyes now review the same data. Not because the previous team missed anything, but because certainty is built through repetition. Every sensor feed from the encounter has been preserved. Every second has been logged. Time, bearing, altitude, speed. Nothing is assumed. Nothing is thrown away. This is where modern naval encounters truly conclude. Not in the sky, but in analysis.
Radar specialists compare return profiles across multiple bands, confirming how the aircraft appeared from different angles and distances.
Infrared teams study thermal curves, matching engine behavior with changes in power. Optical analysts replay high-resolution frames, isolating tiny movements in the flight controls that only become visible at close range. Each discipline works separately, then the results come together. No one raises their voice, no one rushes to a conclusion. This is not a dramatic debrief. This is careful work, designed to remain useful long after memory fades. On the bridge, the captain signs the final operational log from the encounter. The language is short, factual, almost clinical. No adjectives, because adjectives do not survive review. The carrier continues along its assigned track. Speed unchanged, course unchanged. The carrier group remains layered, steady, and predictable. But that predictability is not a flaw. It is control.
Below deck, secure data packages are finalized and sent through channels built for patience, not urgency. There is no rush. What was collected will not lose value with time. In fact, the longer it can be studied calmly, the more useful it becomes. This is the unseen half of strategic confidence. Not spectacle, not noise. Memory. The Su-57 pilot will land somewhere far from this deck. He will describe what he saw. A low pass, no visible response. A carrier that did not react. That version of events will travel. But it will travel incomplete, because the pilot cannot describe what he gave away. He cannot know how much of his aircraft was measured, how many assumptions were tested, how many unknowns became known in only a few minutes. He came close to demonstrate presence. He left, having revealed pattern. On board the carrier, there is no sense of celebration. Sailors do not gather to retell the moment. They return to routine with the quiet confidence of people who trust the systems around them. That culture matters, because restraint without capability is empty, and capability without restraint is unstable. The balance between them is where real authority lives. The encounter may not appear in headlines immediately. It may never be acknowledged publicly. That too is intentional. Strategic advantage does not need applause. It needs consistency. As night approaches, the carrier's lights shift, watches change, aircraft cycle through their routines. The sea remains indifferent. Somewhere beyond the horizon, other aircraft move. Other ships hold course. Other tests are waiting for another day. This one is finished. The Su-57 came close, looking for a reaction. It found discipline instead. It sought noise and found silence. And in that silence, something permanent was created. Not just a memory, a reference. Because the most decisive moments at sea are not always the ones that look dramatic from the outside. Sometimes they are the moments when one side understands far more than the other and chooses not to say so. The carrier sails on, unchanged in course, expanded in knowledge, ready for the next moment when the sky decides to test the force that already knows how to wait.